All right, here we are in the Gorilla Sports Studios, the I'm from Denver podcast with Brandon Lloyd, sponsored by Mountain State Toyota. Shout out to them, as always. We got a great guest today that you brought in, Austin Einhorn.
Austin Einhorn, yeah, he's a fantastic personal trainer. He trains professional athletes in the major sports, but even the non-traditional sports. So
across the world,
the non-stick and ball sports, and that's what I think about when I'm moving from being a professional athlete to a recreational athlete is how do I still train because I love it and I love the way my body feels, but how can I prepare for the sports that I'm going to play recreationally and take it seriously?
And dude, you are such a pro, Brandon. You're even like, what do I need to train in my body parts for tennis? What do I need to train my body parts for? You asked him, Austin, about skiing, and he had great answers on that. Yes. So, and I just learned because I'm just an average fan, I guess, which is work out 3 times a week maybe. But I learned so much more from you and from him into what it takes to be a professional athlete. So it's a great podcast episode, and I think a lot of people will learn a lot. Even if you're not a professional athlete, you're still going to learn.
Yeah, most importantly, even if you're not a professional athlete, you still want to train, you still love to train. And Austin definitely has a fantastic program. And even if you're not going to work out with Austin, but just start thinking about preparing yourself as a recreational athlete.
Yeah, I mean, he's even talking about how to prevent injuries with just running. Like, it was a great episode. So enjoy it. Brandon Lloyd on the I'm from Denver podcast, another great episode with Austin Einhorn.
This podcast is brought to you by Mountain State Toyota, Colorado's #1 Toyota volume dealer. Trusted, transparent, and the team that's been taking care of Colorado drivers for years. If you want a dealership that actually treats you right, Mountain States Toyota is the place.
Brandon, I told you the shoe game was important, and especially with this white shot. Look at those kicks. And that was the first thing that Austin brought up right there was your shoe game. So what did you tell him? You saw shoes right away.
Yeah, those aren't made anymore. Those are like, early 80s, 90s Nikes? Those are some of like the original running shoes.
This is the Nike Cortez, the shoe Forrest Gump wore.
Oh, yeah.
She gave me the best gift anyone could ever get in the wide world.
Just for running.
Now, are you just pay attention? Are you a Nike head, or is it
not at all. I just pay attention to random things, as you'll learn today.
Exactly. Well, talk about your shoe game.
These are just comfortable slip-ons that have like 2 millimeters of rubber underneath them. I like for myself a barefoot shoe, but let me say that with grain of salt of like I'm not the kind of guy who's like barefoot shoes are everything. Everybody needs to be barefoot in the nature all the time. These are just shoes are a tool.
Well, I feel like people went away from the toe
because they look ridiculous. And they smell so bad no matter what you do.
Okay, and moving more towards a platform where it's more like the toes can spread, and be more flat, and while still having some structure around the foot.
I mean, this has almost no structure, but there's different models that have more or less structure. Like I have a winter boot. I've got a ton of pairs of these, but like I grew up playing volleyball, played in college, briefly professionally. Like I would never ever step on a court in a barefoot shoe. No, I have like 3 pairs of Kobe's for that.
Yeah, there's a time and place for
exactly
sneaker, and time and place for a barefoot shoe.
Exactly.
Now, is the shoe game important in your field? Like, do you look at the shoes as such an important piece to?
Depends on who I'm working with.
Oh, okay.
So how I think about it this way, there was a MLB player that I worked with, and his big toe didn't bend very much. It was pretty arthritic. And so if he had a flexible shoe, that would damage the toe more. And so that's where I asked, he was able to go to Nike to get a more customized shoe where it was just like a 2x4 underneath. It was carbon fiber, but a 2x4 underneath the whole shoe so it didn't bend. But the trade-off is because that makes the shoe, the term would be a longer lever. It's a lot more taxing on the Achilles. So that I had to, if I'm going to save his toe, I need to also protect the extra work his Achilles is going to do and give him that extra Achilles work. So I think of shoes in that way. Is like, what is the tool, how is it used, and what's the trade-off with the athlete?
You talk about your shoes. I did want to get into your origin story.
Yeah.
But you are a trainer.
Of sorts.
You are a student athlete and the trainer.
Yeah, I went to a very low funded, and by low funding, I mean no funding, D3 school for volleyball.
Yeah.
And we were pretty good. And that, losing in the Final Four of my sophomore year, like really turned things around with the also interesting timing with the stress fracture in my back. And the athletic trainer, bless her heart, but she didn't give me that great of advice other than just get really strong. And so
take an aspirin, get strong.
that was it. And so then I started, finding Men's Fitness and T Nation and whatever else was online, which were like not great articles, but just was in the gym a ton. And so then I became the unofficial strength coach for the team, where like the coach was like, you have to train with Austin at least twice a week. And then, on the road, we didn't have anybody to tape ankles or anything. So I became that guy. What I think is funny and enough is like, I quit volleyball and I had this, quarter life crisis because I planned on playing professional for 3 to 5 years. I'm like, what am I going to do? And now I look back, I'm like, of course it was this. Like, it was so obvious all along, but I just didn't have the wherewithal to realize like, oh, this could be a career.
You just threw yourself into it.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I went back got back to the States from volleyball, and I thought I would go to physical therapy school because all my other friends were going to some sort of grad school. And I got a job at a PT clinic as like an assistant. And within like a week or two, I'm like, oh dear God, this is not for me. And so one of the bosses, a lot of the PTs there were like, I wish I could make a different decision. Or a few of them. And he was like, get into strength and conditioning. And then I started just after my first pro athlete, Dwight Lowry. You maybe played against him a few times. He was a safety. And being able to help somebody of that caliber, I thought was really cool, but it just gets me more interested in the complex problem. And so that's why I've kind of catered a lot more towards professional athletes. It's just more interesting of a problem. I think it's hilarious. I don't know. I have no idea about like the pop culture of sports. I just know like the forces, the training, how to keep them healthy, where injuries are really common.
And you have to play through them, and you have to, make workarounds.
Exactly.
For
so
athletes, because a lot of times we show up and we can do it, but there's incredible deficiencies.
Absolutely.
But, because these guys are 1%, they're still able to go out there and perform and do things that others can't do.
Which is, I think, a testament to how skilled they are. And it's truly incomparable that unless you've worked with these people, you really don't understand. So like I've worked with a lot of offensive linemen, and I had a 42-inch vertical. Like I had some power in my day, and I would be racing one of these guys in a dead sprint, and he's still beating me.
Right.
And I'm not, maybe I'm not as good of an athlete now, but back then, like I thought I had a decent sprint time, and it's nowhere near to the biggest, fattest guys on an NFL field.
Yeah, they were by far my favorite athletes on the field, were the linemen.
Yeah.
I mean, to be able to do the things they do. So what year did you start working with, you said his name was Dwight?
Yeah, that was, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so just what year did you start working with Dwight, and then what's the evolution
You're right.
going from then?
Yeah, because you did the PT thing, and then you said no, and then you went to the athlete. So what? Yeah, how? Did
so I didn't have enough clientele to like live off of strength and conditioning, and I didn't know much, so I wasn't like charging a whole lot. So I was still the aide, and I was like learning a few things from the physical therapy side. That was in 2011, and then I kept on. Dwight stayed healthy with me, thank God, and he still attributes that to me, even though I'm like I had no idea what I was doing.
Miracle workers.
We'll maybe. But a few athletes got hurt under my care. Like one girl she had 3 ACL tears in the matter of like 2 years. One NFL player, he tore his tricep, and I maybe stupidly optimistic. I think these can go away. And so I started, these are all non-contact injuries. And so I start diving as deep as possible into all the information and research I can find, taking as many courses that I can find, and I'm not getting the right answers. I'm not getting answers that are keeping athletes healthy. And so that's when I started carving my own path. And so, as I was telling you earlier, one of my companies is called The Evolved Coach. And it's because I've studied a lot of evolution into how this species evolved, the human species, and how does that evolution then teach us about better versus worse ways to use the human body? The prototypical example is the rotator cuff. And I can paint a picture to anybody listening right now of what a rotator cuff exercise, and everybody has an idea of what it is.
Mm-hmm. Let me guess, it's this one.
1,000%.
Where you, for the people listening, it's like you have your arm at a 90-degree angle directly outside of your body, and then you just move it back and forward.
It's more like a robot dance move.
Forward and back. Yeah.
Yeah. And the bands that people use, they might have like 12 pounds of force or not very much. But the rotator cuff only exists in about 6 species on the planet. And there's one commonality in all those animals, that they climb, hang, and swing. And when you swing from branch to branch, that's almost like 3 to 5 times your body weight. So how much do you weigh?
190 pounds.
Okay, let's call it round up to 200. So for a moment, if you were to swing on a gymnastics ring or a pull-up bar, that's going to be 1,000 pounds going through your rotator cuff. And a baseball player is going to experience about 1 times their body weight as they pitch and throw. College is a little bit less. And so we have this huge and I think interesting mismatch between the demand on the body in sport and the level of training is just so low. And so, of course, you see all these injuries. And to me, it makes perfect sense now after I've started to dive into this stuff. And maybe it's more than what you asked for, but that's the evolution of my career.
So is the Evolve Coach, is that specifically talking about the rotator cuff, or are there more components?
No, there's more components. That is a whole methodology that I teach to other movement coaches, physical therapists, chiropractors, people who are more interested in keeping the body healthy and performing better. So last week I was with the Chicago Cubs, their whole staff from strength coach to physical therapist, and talking about what needs to happen differently under their roofs to keep their athletes healthy.
Yeah.
So you've evolved from just working with individual athletes to you work with their team that works with the athletes.
It's starting to go that way more. Yeah.
Wow. And that's also an evolution for coaches, because a lot of times coaches get stuck with doing, one particular way that they were coached on, many, many years ago. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of people don't know about being a professional athlete is the organization isn't necessarily incentivized to keep them healthy, because there's so many athletes coming in every year.
Yeah.
So how is that relationship with you being introduced with a new form of thinking into this traditional model where they're not incentivized to keep people healthy? How are you navigating that?
As best I can. I mean, I think you'll have an idea of how I'm treated. Am I allowed to cuss on this?
Yeah,
show?
whatever you need
All
to do.
right.
Yeah.
I'll reworking, let's say, an NFL player, and I give him an exercise that looks very different from what any strength coach or rehab professional will ever prescribe, but it works for him, and it keeps him healthy, it keeps him feeling good, and it even maybe makes his force plate testing scores look a lot better. And he gets interrogated or questioned by a staff member who is well-intentioned, but maybe they're overworked, or maybe they're worried about their job. They're worried about something looking different. And my client will be like, well, I see this guy and he's telling me that to do this thing, and it's actually working pretty well. And, then there's this, like, he tosses up his hands, like, all you guys have your own fucking guy, like, whatever, like, just still you need to do my thing. And that's more the approach that I've experienced from a lot of the football side of things. Different pro sports have very different cultures around them regarding what happens in rehab and strength training. The Europeans and Australians that I've worked with have been much more open-minded and more welcoming to some of these ideas. But I get it. Like they're overworked. It's like a 4-to-10 ratio maybe within a team, and that's not good enough. The best I've heard of is in the Warriors, where there's 4 athletes for 1 staff member, and then there's the whole job security component. Like you're not incentivized to take risks when you're worried about losing your job.
Yeah, what a trainer says is, this is the tried and true method. This works, and if a player gets hurt, it's the player's fault. Because this method works for the majority of the other players.
I don't even know if it works for the majority of the other players.
I mean, according to,
I would say it's the tried and true method. It's what we learned in physical therapy school, and so therefore I'm safe and I made the right decision. But if you zoom out, like, injuries are still on the rise globally, despite all the data. There's more data than ever, and there's more injuries than ever also. And it's a lot of complicated factors, but if someone's making the case of like, well, I'm just trying to do my best job, I'm like, well, you're not. I understand that, but it's not getting the results done.
Yeah, not making any bold proclamations or statements with that statistic that injuries are on the rise. What are the few things that you attribute that to?
The game is, all games across the board are more intense and more competitive.
More explosive.
That's more explosive. Yep. So let's talk about baseball, for instance. Velocity of throwing and bat speed is prioritized more than ever. And so position players that actually take at bats are at risk for oblique strains now. That has come up. And so one of my simple equations is, let's look at the demand of batting or even throwing, and it's really high. And yet the things that, pass the sniff test for core training are just so embarrassingly low. Where I'm like, yeah, of course they're tearing their obliques.
Yeah, they're doing sit-ups.
They're doing sit-ups or just dead bugs and bird dogs and Palloff presses. Can I tell a little story related to this? So I worked with, I want to protect anonymity here. So I worked with a first round draft pick in a major pro sport, and he had years of back pain. And, sometimes it takes years of pain for them to be willing to come do something different with me. And so he started doing something different. We started making a ton of progress. I don't promise to cure anybody or like have a cure all in the first, month or so. And he has a flare up, and he gets really worried about the state of his back. And so he goes and sees, a quote unquote world's best spine surgeon. And he's probably really good about surgery, not so good about movement training and rehab. They don't get much schooling for that. And so he tells him, hey, this is my 5-phase spine program. And phase 1 is going to be 5 minutes of bird dogs, dead bugs, and sit-ups. Phase 2, 6 minutes of bird dogs, sit-ups, and dead bugs. And I bet you can guess what phase 3 is, phase 4, and phase 5.
Let me guess. It ends with back surgery.
No, it ends.
You go see a back surgeon, you're getting a back surgery.
I mean, maybe that for a lot of his clients, probably.
It was 8 minutes. Yeah.
And so this dude gets to phase 5, and he still can't bend over without pain. And his job requires him to round his back every once in a while. And that's when he's like, all right, I'm back on your like more different program, Austin. Like, what do you have for me? And I go about it in a very, problem solving type manner. I was like, well, we haven't tried this yet. Let's try that. And now he's 2 years pain free.
Yep.
And so like this, there's a lot of glitz and glamour around professional sports and professional athletes, but I still think we're like just starting.
So what's your problem solving technique with that? So you're like, someone comes to you, it seems like you're approaching it different than like the traditional sense. Yeah. So like, how do you diagnose that and be like, okay, this is what we need to do for that? Like, even like you saying you're making a stiff board for that baseball player's toe. Yeah. How do you get to that point of understanding the solution for their problem?
I mean, the core principles, I don't repeat stuff that doesn't work. Like I understand just how short an athletic career is. I understand just how short an off season is. So I have a heuristic, a rule of thumb that I work by is that if I'm trying to solve a problem, if I don't have significant improvement within 2 weeks or less, I probably need to do something different. And it doesn't mean I'm making any miracle cures or anything. It means that what the athlete is telling back from me is like, wow, I feel a lot better. I'm like, okay, we probably found the thing. But it's with, let's use the Achilles, for example. There's only so many variables. There's 7 muscles that help the Achilles lift the heel. You can literally go through a process of elimination, just ticking off which muscle may or may not be problematic.
And that's through muscle testing.
A little bit of muscle testing, a little bit of observation, a little bit of, just seeing, like, asking a simple question. Hey, have you ever loaded your Achilles before? And so here's a haunting statistic from one paper is that 80% of Achilles tears had no pain beforehand. Only 20% of people had pain. And the precursor to an Achilles tear oftentimes is not pain, it is weakness. The only way that we know in research to get a tendon stronger is to lift a fuckload of weight, like really heavy. I'm talking about, like, I'm doing calf raises with 315 on my back, sometimes more, to actually make my Achilles more dense. Yeah. And when one of the first questions, there was an Australian here 2 weeks ago, he was dealing with some soleus and foot issues.
Tell people what the soleus is.
Soleus, it's one of the muscles that attaches to your Achilles. So it's your calf muscle behind your shin. It's one of them. It's responsible for a lot of things when it comes to running, jumping, changing direction. And so the simplest thing I ask him is like, hey, have you ever trained your Achilles before? Have you done heel raises? He's like, yeah, I have. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to audit that. How heavy? He's like, well, probably about like 30 kilos, which is 60, 70 pounds. And I'm like, not nearly heavy enough.
Hey, kilos way more than pounds. For some reason, kilos feel heavy.
You know how many people PR when they switch units? Where they're like, I ask them like, oh, you're going to squat with 140 kilos today.
They're like, yeah, man, that's huge.
And they have no idea that it's a PR. It's so funny. I've had this idea where I've wanted to like scrape all the numbers off of my plates.
Dude, I'm just going to pick the biggest one.
Yeah,
exactly. And I'd rather you go by feel, Huh. Yeah. And so that was a big part of it. The next part of it, believe it or not, is that, I think he was taking his heel raises for granted. So like I said, there are 7 muscles that can help raise the heel. Yep. There's no guarantee that all of them are working well. And so one of the observational things that I like to look at is, does the skin on the Achilles actually fold and wrinkle? And if that wrinkles, that means the distance shortened, that the muscle connected to the Achilles actually shortened. So anybody watching them can do this is just set their phone up behind them, do a heel raise, and you should see some substantial wrinkles.
Well, a lot of times as an athlete, I'm doing heel raises, but I'm training my calf muscles. I'm not necessarily thinking of it as an Achilles exercise.
Yeah, but they're one and the same because they're attached.
No, right.
Yeah.
But you're just saying you're not thinking
when I was training, I was not even thinking about my Achilles. Yeah. I was only like, I want my calf muscles to bulge.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm doing the multi-direction calves because that's going to equate to explosiveness and so forth.
Yeah.
But I was not thinking about training my Achilles.
I don't think anybody is. Right. I think a lot of people just think, oh, that won't happen to me.
Which is wild, especially when you see so many professional athletes having those injuries, that there isn't someone like you saying, hey, we need to train those calves a lot more and get that Achilles strong.
Yeah, and I don't know. I have friends in various leagues, and some people say, like, I've never seen a guy lift more than 275 pounds. And regardless of whether it's tennis, golf, soccer, most men should be able to lift more than 275 pounds off the ground. Like a trap bar. And another, source would be like, they're all on tendon protocols. And I'm like, well, doesn't seem like it. I'm more inclined to think that there's more that can be done.
Yeah, it seems like more like a buzzword right now. Tendon protocol.
Yeah.
I know. I like to train for the sports that I play. That's right now in my recreational sports days. I like to train, so that's why I lift weights, is so that I can go out and play tennis, so that I can go sprint, and I can golf, and go for long hikes, right? And so that's the reason why I weight train. I'm just now getting into skiing, so I wanted to get some advice.
Yeah, the types of skiers I work with are the Lindsey Vonn kind of skiers, not her specifically, but the ones who throw themselves down the mountain at 70 miles an hour between gates. So we can backtrack from there, but to set the bar, when they're turning, they're taking like 7 to 8 times their body weight. So 7 to 8 G's per turn. Wow. And again, let's think of maybe something that's been hidden in plain sight with skiers. You've got a really long stick strapped to your foot. That makes a lot of leverage against your foot and your lower leg. And there's not enough training for that lower leg. So when you approach a turn, based on my understanding, you'll be more onto the back part and then to the front part. So you're going to be doing training the front and back part of your lower leg, your calf. And so that would be one really low hanging fruit. The next is going to be time under tension, because you guys are just, you spend an eternity in a squat and like where I think there's a lot of risk is you have your summer, you have your fall, and then suddenly you have the first snow. And so then people are like, all right, I got my season pass, I'm going up. And they're, to put it simply, like they're not in skiing shape or snowboarding shape.
That's right.
And so what you want to try to do is have that mismatch be as small as possible. So let's say, you could do this next time you go skiing, is like, how long is your average run? And there's apps, I think, that can track this, but let's say it's 2 minutes. You'd probably want to be starting to do like 2 minutes.
Wall sits
Or oscillating squats where you're just like keeping time under tension.
Nice. That's a good idea.
For runners, a simple test that I do is just a lunge, a low lunge where everything's bent at 90 degrees. And the better runners can hold that for like 3 to 5 minutes. And so I would hope that an aspiring skier, somebody getting back into skiing or whatever, they should be able to hold for the length of a run. So let's say a minute to 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes.
And then, because I do traditional back squats just because it's my favorite exercise. So say I have 185 pounds on the bar. Do I need to be able to hold that under tension, or am I just holding my body weight?
Well, let's work backwards. What kind of skiing do you do? What's the demand?
I don't do any skiing right now. But I'm going to do downhill skiing on the green run.
Okay, pretty simple. Like you're probably in the clear with the 185. You don't need to hold for 2 minutes. I would be like, start with just your body weight, because on a green run it's less steep, and so you're not going to experience nearly as much G forces. So start with just your body weight. If you're doing black diamond stuff, or when you're doing black diamond stuff, you probably want to be able to squat like at least twice your body weight for 6 reps.
And that's just a traditional squat.
I don't care. Like trap bar deadlift is probably going to be more comparable. Because the
distance between the legs being more parallel, or
you're just not going to go as far down. It'll be a little more specific for your skiing.
Got it.
That I think is a good metric for 2 times your body weight. And then you should also, you have that high weight number, a high strength number, and then just make sure you have your muscular endurance. So like muscles should be burning when you're in the gym, like you're doing really long intervals. And the more you do the endurance stuff, the more you're probably able to ski per weekend that you go up, or per day.
But the people that are just the average person, maybe not preparing for this, are they risking damage to their body, or are they already doing damage to their body because they're not working out or getting in this kind of stage of preparation? What's that risk like for just the average person going up? Like how much?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you start doing a new sport and aren't prepared for it, there's a lot of risk. Look at pickleball.
Well, what I tell people is that when you see a professional athlete on television, they've been warming up for 3 hours. 3 hours. So if you think you're just gonna pull up to the tennis court, jump out your car, go on the tennis court, and then start playing, I mean, you're probably going to jack yourself up, and
Yeah.
if you're not jacking if you don't have a catastrophic event, it's just unhealthy. So
Yeah.
even just bringing in some sort of high knees, running around the court a couple times, doing some lateral movements, doing some of the movements that you'd be doing on the court or on the field, whatever your rec sport is, doing some of those movements prior to, for at least 30 minutes is probably a good idea.
Yeah, that's pretty sound advice.
The
only thing I would add to that list is then do the sport in slow motion, like Tai Chi speed.
Yeah.
Just to get as many muscles working as possible.
Nice.
And most people, like the where I'm trying to like cover my bases with that warm up is at least I get some tension onto tendons, and tendons love load. So like fast stuff, ballistic, change of direction stuff, that's the thing that makes tendons risky. As far as the risk for your recreational athlete just going up there, like, yeah, there's always going to be risk. Like when you do something you haven't been doing, unless you're like 7 years old.
Right. But you still took the summer off, and then you're kind of going back into it.
Right. And so like you can't mimic skiing here unless you, like, some of my skiers will rollerblade in some of their off seasons because that's pretty close.
And I use snowbound.
Oh, that's an indoor place.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, there you go. I mean, that would be
that's how I'm
great.
training.
If people don't have that, then it's just like, as silly as it would sound, like pretend you're skiing in the weight room.
That's right.
Maybe not mogul type stuff, but like just long durations in different positions that look, smell, and feel like skiing.
Yeah.
Well, as I was reading about you, it was really cool because you were like, you defined yourself as almost the Yoda to Luke Skywalker in a sense of like how you help athletes and that. How do you help athletes in the sense of if you never played that sport, right? Like how are you really adapting to learning? Like the good thing that one thing that you brought up was like, oh, if you ski, the heel's coming up or the foot's going forward. You have to teach yourself a lot of this, right? You have to immerse yourself into that sport a little bit to really understand that motion.
I mean, I had to immerse myself a lot more in the beginning. Now I've just understand a lot of the principles. At the end of the day, it's still just movement and forces. And so I can, if like I've worked with a few Gaelic football players. It's the national sport of Ireland. And after a few minutes of watching a YouTube clip, I'm like, okay, I understand what is needed for that sport, or Australian rules football. And so it's a lot easier for me to pick up now. And then I ask I'm lucky enough to work with really high level athletes who know a lot. So then I ask them to teach me some stuff as well. But I mean, there's plenty of research out there. I just need to go and look for it and read it. And that's where I need to get more nuanced. And that's when I am taking a more nuanced level of like, what really is the demand on the shoulder for a baseball player, and like seeing what the actual research is.
Well, going back to your evolved athlete coaching, where can people find that information?
Right.
Where can a coach sign up, or at what level should a coach start thinking about maybe contacting you?
I think if you're interested in helping prevent injuries, solve injuries, or even help performance, then start with one of the courses, and that's at theevolvedcoach.com. There aren't really any prerequisites, although you should have an understanding of like movement and a little bit of anatomy. But I have people from, personal trainers to physical therapy, chiropractors, all sorts of people who just work with the body, but have that intention to help people move better, whether it's they work with weekend warriors, general population, or professional athletes.
And then talk about the business aspect of it. Once a coach signs up, then how do you recommend building that clientele?
Yeah, so this is where my head is at now. I was like, I've realized that just having a methodology that can drastically prevent or eliminate injuries for people isn't enough. If somebody takes all of my courses and learns from me for years, but is still seeing a normal amount of patients per day as a physical therapist, they will be limited. So like 10 to 12 people a day is extremely overwhelming. And it's an assembly line schedule where the assembly line was built to for automated actions that are kind of thoughtless. When you're trying to solve an injury or a movement problem, it is one of the brain and the body are the most complex things in the known universe that we know of. So now, like for me, I'll see at this stage in my career, I see one athlete a week. It's an intensive, and I see them for 90 minutes at a time. Some of my higher level students, I recommend that they eventually get to 3 per day, because it is just so exhausting on the brain to actually solve injuries and solve them fast. And so I've realized the business model has to change. Yeah. That if you're seeing 10, 12 people a day, like, oh man, I feel so bad for the person seeing you last. Yeah. Like you have the research on this is really fascinating, that you lose the ability to think creatively when you're short on time, energy, or even money. When you have this scarcity, you cannot make as good of decisions. And so for me, I think the business needs to go toward a lower quantity, higher quality model at a higher price point. But I think at the end of the day, the client will end up paying a lot less. It'll be more per session, but it'll be a lot fewer sessions because the problem will actually get solved. Or this problem will be prevented because the athlete or client keeps the coach on board.
Dude, I'm blown away by all this. I don't even know how you keep track of learning the nuances and taking care of someone, and then you got to think the whole business model on top of that for something that is almost, the system's broken in a sense.
It's very broken.
Yeah. Is the goal then for you to change that whole system? Is that
I'm not going to replace it. Yeah. The end game is that there's a different kind of coaching out there. And coaching can be physical therapy, strength coaching, personal training, whatever. I'm just putting that all under one umbrella. I'm not here to replace it. That's not going to go away. No. You know, I just want a different option for people.
As a professional athlete, what was when you would get trainers or you would injure, did you ever have a severe injury, and like, did you feel like it lacked the skill set to help you with your injury? Like, would someone like Austin have been a better solution, or did you use something?
Of course,
like that?
I already said
how
the teams aren't incentivized to take care of you. So I had always had an outside trainer.
You always did.
Always did, and it was as soon as I could afford it, because that's the biggest part of it. I think I first started off with an applied kinesiologist. I got my diet together. And always in the locker room, there's guys that always had their outside trainers. And then what I started doing was just working out with them. In the off season, I go spend a week in Phoenix and training with the guys who live down in Phoenix with their trainer. I, go train in Utah. I, train in Cali. I met a guy at a car show one time, and in San Francisco. He walked up to me. He's like, "Man," he's like, "You're really skinny." He's like, "You're Brandon Lloyd?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You should come work out with me." He's a real big buff dude. I was like, "You got it." I did.
Wow.
And so I went and worked out with him, and actually that was going into my second year in the NFL, and I was probably 175 pounds. It was dangerous being out there my rookie year, and I worked out with him in the off season, and it was mainly just getting me off of the fast food, start taking a protein shake to supplement the more calories that I needed, and we worked out twice a day. So we did that for about, I'd say, 4 months, and I went into my second NFL season 193 pounds. And it was just kind of, that really just shifted how I started thinking about, how to supplement what the team is offering versus what I truly needed to do for myself to put the padding on for safety. Yeah. Like putting on the muscle padding, I needed that for safety, and then just the durability, and it completely just revolutionized my game. It went to another next level. And then later in my career, I would like when I went to Washington, I was in the locker room, and I was like, "All right, who's got the best body in here?" And I was like, "All right, who's your trainer?"
It's really smart and very open-minded. Yeah. Like I've never heard of another pro athlete doing that, actually.
Yeah. I was just like, "All right," I was like, "Sean Springs." He's got the best body. He's the oldest. He's like one of the older players in the locker room, and he's just big and strong. Muscles were voluptuous. I mean, it's just like he was awesome looking, and a freak of nature athlete. And so I was like, "All right, who's your trainer?" "All right, Ian Danny." I'm there. And so that's what, and that just took my career to a whole nother next level. Once I started training with Ian down in Scottsdale.
Wow. And that, do you see that with yourself, Austin? Like you're helping these athletes, and you brought it up earlier that it's wild to think, because as a fan, I'm like, wow, Brandon Lloyd just made a crazy catch. Well, you're a badass 1% of the 1%, right? Like maybe you're playing hurt and injured, but I wouldn't know it just because I'm watching a professional athlete. Do you see these athletes that you're working with to where they're already at the top of their game, but they had a bad back, or they had that little thing that you helped them, and it just transformed how they played the next week or the next competition?
Yeah.
How does that make you feel? Like
a lot of things. Like, I've had, the commonality for me is that, like, an athlete comes to me, they've struggled with an injury for years, and then they stop getting hurt. Their performance also goes up. Some of the athletes that are less injured than Steamy, then their performance goes up. On some days, it's really exciting. It's cool to hear about a guy hitting 33% more home runs after you work with him. It's also very frustrating because I feel like I'm nobody. And like, I don't even think I'm that smart. And some of these things I think are just so obvious once you can shift your perspective, that I'm like, why is it just me? Why is it there are few people like me that are able to make these 20, 30% changes with the 1% of athletes? Like, I don't want it to be just me. And that's why I'm teaching now. It's like, yeah, so it's both exciting and frustrating.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you came on. This is very enlightening. It's cool because it's like, I'm just a fan, right? And so I was a fan of Brandon. I'm a fan of the Broncos. I'm a fan of sports, probably not to the degree that some people are, but to know the intricacies of players training 3 hours before the game, to know that they are hiring trainers like yourself to improve their game. There's so many nuances to being a professional athlete that as a fan, you're just like, oh, that guy's cool, or why didn't he catch the ball? And it's like you said the other day about Franklin, it's like, oh, he's got to get his eyes on point. There's so many things as a fan I've experienced in this podcast that I like, because I'm like, I never would have thought of that. Never realized the depth of that.
I guess maybe before we go, what advice do you have for recreational athletes? If maybe someone, because we're going to have your information, in the bio for this, like leading up to maybe a call with you, to working with you, what would a recreational athlete think? How should they, be training, and what should they be thinking about before they start working with a trainer of like your caliber, or a trainer in general?
Pain is not normal. Like, and I'm sorry that so many people have had bad experiences with physical therapists. There is other ways. You just need to find somebody who can problem solve and do something different. Some of the lowest hanging fruit that I can mention for the entire population is everybody needs to be training their Achilles and their calves. Like, especially if you're running and changing direction or jumping. I have a whole program made for runners, and it's filled with a lot of research. One of them being that your soleus, the muscle that it's attached to your Achilles on your calf, it's responsible for 77% of the vertical movement with every step of your stride. And yet nobody, even the pro runners that I work with, nobody is training their calves. Like, that puts you again in a very small population that you actually did it, Brandon.
And still do.
Fantastic.
Brandon's not skipping leg day.
Yeah. Tendons love load. So like quad tendons, hamstring tendons, shoulder tendons, they do not change unless you're doing a substantial amount of weight. And so I would encourage people to, you don't need to go fast, and you don't need to jump into the deep end of the pool, but start pushing some of those weight numbers. And if you need somebody, I have a whole, I'm building an army of these kinds of coaches who can help people. But at the end of the day, like, general population should not be blowing up their knees or Achilles playing pickleball or pickup basketball or whatever, or just running. Like 50 to 70% of recreational runners are hurt every single year. And that, I think, running is one of the easiest activities in sports to stay injury free in, if you have the right training.
Hey, it's been a great podcast. I appreciate you coming on. I know it was awesome to have Brandon. Brandon wanted you on, and I was like, yeah, this is going to be a great podcast. So it's been a learning experience for me. So props to you for everything you've done. And you might say you're not smart, but I'm blown away.
I think you're smart.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been great chatting with you guys.
Yeah, awesome. Maybe share your social media handles?
Yeah,
and your website again?
I'm mainly just on Instagram, and that is at Austin Einhorn, Einhorn. The website for the course and any problem-solving guides that people can download, that is at theevolvedcoach.com. Those are the main two that I want to direct people toward.
And so I'm hoping to get up there and do a workout with you.
Yeah, please.
And maybe we can post it and kind of
Would love that.
help folks.
Yeah.
Get you ready for ski season or what?
I mean, ski season, it's happening.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, we'll get up there.
We'll do ski season, but as a personal curiosity for myself, I'm just like, what did football leave in your body? That
Right.
that we can.
Right.
Oh wow, that's super
Neat.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good perspective.
there's a lot. What I like finding is things that you don't know exist. That like, oh, you didn't know that you're operating at like a 7 out of 10 until I show you what a 10 out of 10 could feel like.
Of course. Well, Jared's not just the co-host; he's the producer. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
your idea.
Yeah, that's it right
that's a
there.
good
Yeah,
idea.
let's go.
Cool.
Well, thank you for coming on. We appreciate you.